The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Friday in the Riv. Well, we've got a ton of stuff.
Before you take off on that, remember everybody, tomorrow is the Fall River Children's Holiday Parade. Kicks off at 1 o'clock from Kennedy Park, with events down at Government Center after the parade, including the tree lighting, and I think they said they're going to have some snacks and hot cocoa and that stuff.
And more, well, and more importantly, tomorrow is December 7th.
Yes, that was the next thing I was going to.
A day that shall live in infamy. The day that Pearl Harbor was bombed and we lost over 23 or 2,400 American servicemen, and another 1,500 or so were wounded. And we should all remember that was the beginning of World War II. And our greatest generation fought for what we believe in this country, which is freedom of speech. And I think today is the day, since we're on kind of messages, I think today is the opening day of the movie No Free Space that Adam Carolla and somebody else made about the diminishment of freedom of speech for anybody who isn't far left. And it's actually got some pretty good reviews. And it's actually being supported by people on the left and the right, not the far left, because the far left, you know, they believe in freedom of speech only for themselves and only for what they believe in.
That's right. As long as it agrees with me, I'm fine with it.
That's right. Or as we said on this show that was on live TV when that lunatic got up to the microphone and started screaming at somebody and said, "Fascists do not have freedom of speech." Well, unfortunately, they do in this country.
In this country.
Everybody has freedom of speech in this country, not just you, Pinhead. And you know, this movie is all about this and about the diminishment of what we're seeing. We're seeing people not being allowed to speak, being branded with all kinds of labels, racist and chauvinist and you know, you name it, we got it, because they disagree. So you no longer can have a debate, because as soon as you oppose their position, you're immediately attacked. So, but the most important thing is December 7th. And, you know, a lot of our millennials don't even know where their state is in proximity to the geography of the United States. So many of them don't even know what Pearl Harbor is, and it's unfortunate because apparently they don't learn civics, history, or anything important anymore.
Speaking of that, there's a lawsuit in federal court in Rhode Island because students are suing the school systems in Rhode Island because they don't teach civics.
Yeah, well, good for them.
Yeah, they stood up.
Good for them. Let the people who really want to. And look, you know, when you go to school, you don't like to take physics or civics.
Exactly.
And you don't like to take a lot of things. But as you get older and realize that you got to know something about history, because without knowing about history, you're doomed to repeat it. So you got to know what this country is structured. You can't complain about the system when you don't even have any idea what the system is. It's like people who talk about socialism, communism. They want this country to become socialist. Find me one person who lived in a socialist country that's in favor of socialism. They virtually don't exist. So, you know, on this day before the day that we entered into the greatest war that we've faced, not the longest, but the biggest war from a manpower, fighting on two fronts, fighting in the South Pacific and fighting in Europe. Let's all remember that tomorrow is the day that will always live in infamy if you're an American and you know anything about your nation.
You know, the sad thing was this week in Pearl Harbor, a serviceman, a sailor, went ballistic and did some shooting.
Yeah.
He was stationed on board the USS Columbia. And, you know, of all weeks to pit,
Yeah.
I think this was just
Yeah,
it was a bad situation, but I think it made it worse because of the week that it was in.
yeah, and like you said, CJ, it was really, I mean, talk about, you know, the timing of it, but what was really, really had a profound impact on me was when I saw that news story, the shot that they used, the initial shot that they used in the back was the Arizona Memorial.
Yep.
The memorial to the men who were still down there.
That's right. There's I don't know what the count was.
And now there's another shooting at the Pensacola Naval Base.
Yep.
Today there was an active shooting in Pensacola. You know, it's just crazy, but I think that was really amazing to hear about that only a few days before December 7th and then see the Arizona Memorial. And I visited the Arizona Memorial when I was in Hawaii. And if you ever get to Hawaii, obviously the Arizona Memorial is something that everybody knows about, but a lot of people don't know about the Punch Bowl Cemetery, which overlooks Hawaii. It's on a mountaintop, and that's where many of the men who and women who died in the South Pacific are buried, and it's an awesome, absolutely awesome place to visit. You see all the memorials to the battles in the South Pacific. All the Medal of Honor winners have the Medal of Honor engraved into their tombstones. It's an emotional thing.
Yeah, well, you know, I would think it would be, but it's a shame, as I said, that, you know, and as you said, that our students today don't even know what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that, to me, that is the greatest disrespect this country can do.
Yeah.
These servicemen.
Yeah, and the, as you said, the irony of this is that they have absolutely no idea of the sacrifices made. World War II, the Revolutionary War, every battle ever fought, the blood, the human carnage that took place to give you the right to be an idiot.
Yeah. And
that's the thing. Look, if you want to be an idiot, unfortunately, you have a constitutional right to be an idiot. But at least be an idiot and know that.
And know you're an idiot.
know the price that was paid for allowing you that luxury. Because I can tell you one thing. Go over and do what you do in Hong Kong and see what happens to you.
You won't last too long.
Go over and do it in the Kremlin, and because I know they don't remember what happened in Czechoslovakia when the Czechs laid under the Russian tanks and the Russians engaged the tanks and ran them over. So that's what they got for their protests. But
China did the same thing with Tiananmen Square.
That's right, Tiananmen Square. But the Russians started that.
Yeah.
And in
it's always good to have
Czechoslovakia.
something to claim.
But, you know, this all brings us back to what history.
Right.
History. And people don't know their own history. They don't know the history. They don't know the civics. They don't know what our government's supposed to do. You know, then we see these politicians walking in Washington invoking the forefathers. You know, they had a seance and they were talking to the forefathers. And
Don't talk about Nancy Pelosi now.
Yeah, I think she was alive then. But she might have been alive during the Revolutionary War. But no, it's all about, look, whether you agree with Pelosi or you agree with the Republicans, the reality is everything that's been said and everything that is said today is only opinion. It's speculation. I don't care if you call them constitutional scholars. They don't know what Thomas Jefferson meant. They don't care. They have no idea what the intent of our forefathers truly was. It's an opinion. They can try to debate that and say, because of this, I think they meant this. But the reality is, that, sometimes they speak like they're speaking facts. And the reality is, it's not fact. Everything they say is opinion. It's their interpretation of the Constitution, regardless of whose side they're on. And that's one of the problems. It's a tremendous document, but now they've taken it apart so much. There's 500 different interpretations of everything,
Yeah.
and but the thing is, we live in a country great enough to allow that lunacy that we see going on a daily basis on both sides.
Well,
That partisan politics that has no regard for the price of drugs, funding necessities for the military. Everything stopped because they want to be in power. That's the bottom line to me. You look at this, and it's all about partisan politics. The Democrats want him out, and they want to maintain control, and the Republicans want to regain control of Congress at the expense of the people, which to me means that's why we need term limits. But
yeah, I agree with you there. But what was very interesting about the interview of the students that took out a lawsuit on civics, one of the students turned around and she said, "I had no idea what a bicameral government was." She was honest about it. She said, I had no idea that we had separate divisions of government and they were equal yet, not equal, and that's exactly how she said it. And she goes, but they watch out for each other. She couldn't say checks and balances.
Yeah.
But, that speaks volumes. And she's a high school student. And another one who graduated from high school had no idea because they're teaching to the test. A test which is an absolute failure.
yeah, and we had that discussion on a previous show. And look, on the federal level, we have a tripartite system.
That's right.
We have a judiciary that's supposed to be an equal part. When you get down to local government, really the judiciary isn't a factor. They are a factor when they make rulings, but realistically, it's not the same kind of balance you have on the federal government. But as you said, and it just fascinates me when I see some of these kids getting up and talking about socialism and like they actually know. They have no idea what a monarchy is, a constitutional monarchy, all the forms of government that you study in civics. Well,
You got physics on the head.
I got physics on my mind, yeah. Civics. But I got physics on the mind. It must have been something I was looking at that was in physics. And but all the forms of government, and it's crazy because you can't make a case, a valid case, at least in my opinion, unless you know actually the other side of an argument. I mean, when you go to a debate, when you prepare for a debate, you have a pro and con side, but you know what the question you're debating, but you actually have to research the other side to see what they're going to say in order to effectively debate them. So that's what fascinates me when we have these millennials get up to microphones that don't even know where they couldn't pick the United States out on a globe. Some of them didn't even know that, the Pilgrims were from Europe. and they were from England, because they thought, one of them actually thought Europe was a country. How can you go to college? How can you go to college and actually not know that, being American, and not know where Plymouth Rock is, or where Plymouth is, or where the Pilgrims came
They couldn't even get the dates right when they were asked.
Well, in 1990, but they remembered the jingle, though, because it's catchy. In 1992, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But, of course, Columbus didn't bring the Pilgrims over here. But
that was in 1992. I mean,
that was
Columbus
in 92.
Columbus lived a long time.
That's right. He was like him and Methuselah were back then, for the oldest. But, hey, it is what it is, and we got off on that because it's important.
It is.
People should know about you should know your history, because without history, you're doomed to repeat it. And this nation has a history that is basically soaked in the blood of the patriots who fought to give you the right to be an absolute idiot.
Yet they still make the same mistakes.
And they still make the same mistakes. So here we go. Let's hit this one here. Well, I guess when you want to do the Latin Kings first.
Might as well.
Yeah, they busted that, which is a tremendously large gang. It's one of the largest, I think.
They had 60 arrests.
Yeah, and according to this article, this guy...
And that was in our area. That was Fall River, New Bedford.
Yeah, and they also had Michael, I can't pronounce his last name, Cecalidi, King Merlin of 40 of Springfield, which is in our area, but it's who holds the title of Supreme East Coast Regional Overseer, said he reigned over 14 states from Mass to Florida. He was the supreme, and they were into extreme violence and drugs and stuff, and
human trafficking.
Prostitution. They found actually that the headline of this article was missing teen from Fall River found in New Bedford Latin Kings raid. So they do everything, anything they can make a profit at. So obviously that's it's a fairly well-known gang. Actually, if I remember correctly, 4 or 5 years ago they had a smaller bust with Latin King members too, in this area, in New Bedford specifically. I think New Bedford was really in this part of southeastern New England. I think New Bedford is one of the major. They have one of the major groups of that. So.
Well, they also have at the time, they also had a larger Latin community. I'm not sure if they still do or not. But one of the interesting things that I found very interesting was that Andrew Lelling, the same U.S. District Attorney that's going after our mayor, was speaking very highly of this action. And the law enforcement agencies, state, local, and federal, said it's like the old days when we all worked together. And Lelling has declared war on gangs, and he called them an organized crime organization. I mean, this is the new organized crime. Used to be the mafia was always the organized crime.
Yeah.
Now this is the new organized crime. That doesn't say a lot.
Yeah, he actually, I think, referred to them in the article as the Cosa Nostra.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're similar to the Cosa Nostra. But you're right, and they've taken a different form. They're no longer the gangs of New York or the gangs of Little Italy now. And Lelling segues us into the next. Mayor Carrere's trial could be moved, this article, but now I think it has been moved.
June 2020.
I don't see,
I believe it says in that. You may
given
see
the
it.
addition of 14 to 26, a second defendant and the voluminous addition of discovery, the parties have conferred extended regarding a reasonable new trial date. So, because they got like 1 billion pages of discovery, so they're delaying the inevitable. But again, so he gets to make the summer before he goes on trial. So, hey, it'll be easier for us to drive to Boston to check out the trial. So the weather will be a little bit better for us. But now let's get down to the local, which I love. apparently this guy was on the radio. Former assessor claims thousands of properties have inaccurate values. Did you hear this guy?
Yes, I did.
I mean, talk about the typical, what do we say? Oh, people did worse than Jazel, so that means you got to let them off.
Right.
So now the fact that he colluded with Kathy, and I don't care what Joe Macy says, for numerous adjustments, he made, this is a quote from him, there are thousands of them. No property is 100% accurate. Well, no kidding, because an assessment of value is the opinion of the assessor. And so if there are thousands of them, doesn't that indict him in his office? If we're not close to a norm, didn't he indict himself with that statement?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I mean, so it's okay, because I didn't just make a mistake with Kathy's, that was an intentional mistake. I've made thousands of them. Only in Fall River could somebody get on the radio and say something that stupid and think it was an excuse. There's thousands of properties that are not at 100% accurate. Of course they're not. There's no such thing as 100% accurate assessment, because the assessment is made by an assessor.
That's right.
Who's a human being.
And
so
then,
that is a subjective assessment. Now, obviously, there are guidelines. You have, norms. You look at other properties. You look at surrounding areas. You look at neighborhoods. There are a bunch of criterias there for an assessor to come up with something, but there's a margin for error. Nothing is perfect because it's a subjective assessment.
well, did you know that the city is broken down into various code classifications to determine value of a property? So like this one's an 805 and this one's an 806, and an 805 has less crime than an 806, and an 810 has less crime, and those increase your property value. And they also use recent sale prices of homes around you.
Well, I think everybody in Fall River should actually get tax rebates, because we live in the most dangerous city in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So our crime and code should be 666. Because we should all get no taxes because of the city and all the crime in this city. But look, the bottom line is the codes only reflect a system where you actually get penalized for living in a safe neighborhood.
Right.
Where in your auto insurance, if you live in a safe community, you get lower car insurance. But look, this is ridiculous. I mean, I read this, and it only reinforces how totally convoluted everybody in this city, and everybody that would, they two wrongs don't make a right. But in Fall River, two wrongs do make a right, especially if the other wrong is worse.
Exactly.
So his defense for what he did for Kathy Ann, for her personal gain, for a friend, is offset by the fact that the assessor's office screws up thousands of properties assessments. So tell me how that isn't an indictment of him and the office. So if I read this and I'm from some other community, I'd say, wow, they should fire that entire office.
I would say so too.
Because this is absurd. The guy goes on the radio and says, hey, okay. And what was the other ridiculous thing he said? Do you think I would do that for her to save $275 a quarter or something like that? Well, the answer to that is yes. Absolutely, you would do it. You did it for her because she was part of the cabal or the cartel or loosely government crime wave that got you the job.
And not only that.
So do I think you do that for that amount of money? It had nothing to do with the money. It had everything to do with taking care of one of the people that's connected. That's what it had to do with.
And he admitted that he went out and reassessed the property when the story was about to be released by the Herald News.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to do that.
No.
But because it became public, he had to do it.
Yeah, because otherwise he would have probably reduced it even more.
And when you look at the report, there wasn't one reduction. There were several
That's
reductions.
Right. There were multiple reductions.
Right.
So, and as you said, once the story broke, he went out and reassessed it and tried to come in at a ballpark number. But had that story never broken, for all we know, he might have continued to reduce the value of that property. Because it was inversely proportional. The more she improved the property, the less tax she paid.
That's right. And you know, the thing that made this worse than anything else, the worst thing I can think of, was that Cliff Ponte, acting mayor, didn't want to do anything about it. He says, this is done. We'll put it away. It's done. Why? Because as Terry Sullivan always said, if you keep your head down and keep your mouth shut, they'll forget about it.
God, I am so glad you said that, CJ, because right after we finished the last show talking about this, that's what popped into my mind. We didn't get that in. That this is the attitude of all the connected people in Fall River. No matter what you do, keep your head down, keep your mouth shut. Once the news cycle's over, it'll blow over. You'll get your pay raises, you'll get your stipends, and business as usual. There'll be no consequences for no matter what you do. Whether you falsify overtime sheets like that guy Kenny did.
Yeah.
Whether you mishandle money, whether you steal the taxpayers' money and allow a government official to cheat on her taxes. Nothing. And you're right. Shame on them. So the taxpayer takes it on the chin again. I didn't bring in my sunflower swatter today, but the taxpayers get it tucked in. They were allowed to get away with not paying their full. Do you think you could get away with that? The city would drag your butt into court so fast.
I'd have tax liens on my property.
To make you pay your back taxes, to make you pay the taxes you should have paid. If they found out that you were paying less than you should have been paying, they'd hammer you to the wall. They would hammer you to the wall. But no, government officials get nothing. Nothing. We've had it. Oh, well, we had a report. He resigned. Walk off into the sunset with all that money you made in your pocket. The salary you made, the benefits you had. You don't have to pay anything back. Don't worry about it. The mayor can take a leave of absence, even though the statute says it's supposed to be unpaid. Let's just pay him till January. Let's pay Steve Camara until he's out of office. Because even though he's been occupying that chair for 2 terms as a Westport resident, and when he filed nomination papers, he was a Westport resident, which makes those nomination papers fraudulent. But did our city council and did our acting mayor do a damn thing about it? No.
Neither did corporate counsel. Neither did corporate counsel, because the elections commission turned around and told me that this matter was sent over to corporate counsel's office for an opinion. Again, for an opinion.
And did they ever get an opinion?
Never got one. Never got one. Because as far as they're concerned, it's over and done with, because he didn't get reelected.
You know something, taxpayers of Fall River, remember this. Because he got a salary. Why can't we should be in court right now recouping all the money he got as a city councilor, because he didn't deserve it. So, hey, remember, if you want to get away with something,
do it in Fall River.
Hold public office in Fall River. I mean, look, if we had a couple of Latin kings on a city council, they probably wouldn't get prosecuted.
That's right. Only in Fall River, I'm telling you. Hey, everybody, have a great day, and get out this weekend and see the parade. There's also some events at Durfee High and whatnot for craft fairs, and things are going on for the holidays.
And tomorrow, give a moment of thought for the thousands of lives that were lost in Pearl Harbor. and all the lives that were lost in the war that followed.